Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this ColACP Training of Trainers course. This sequence is on mastering the basics of coaching. In this sequence, we're going to cover 4 points. 1. The basic principles of coaching. 2. Qualities of a good coach. 3. How to coach experts or company executives after a face-to-face or online training. And 4. The special case of an assessment dialogue. Before starting, it's important to recall that ColACP offers coaching sessions to experts as well as business executives from ACP countries in order to strengthen their technical expertise and training skills. Following a coaching session, an expert must be able to prepare and lead a ColACP group or on-site training course alone, and in turn coach another expert. A company executive must be able to apply good practices within their company and in turn train their staff. Experts and company executives are trained by experienced experts on the subject. It is possible that you will benefit from coaching, or conversely, that you will coach an expert or company executive. The basic principles of coaching. Let's start by defining together the basic principles of coaching. What is coaching? Coaching refers to a means of accompanying from one place to another to a defined place. Professional coaching is a method of support that enables a person achieve a goal in a real work situation based on their own resources and skills. It does not mean giving the solution to a problem or doing instead of, which would not allow the learner to develop their own skills. In the coaching process, the learner is the only one who has access to their own path and the professional context. The aim is the professionalism of skills and the autonomy of the learner, with a focus on the individual learner, their strengths, weaknesses, blockages, and facilities. How does coaching work? In contrast to more traditional methods of transmitting knowledge, such as training, coaching involves guiding a person, an expert, a company executive, to develop their own resources to find an answer to a professional situation. Coaching can only take place when the basic skills are developed. The expert or executive must have solid background before benefiting from coaching. This will allow the expert and the executive to put in place skills in their own workplace with individual support. Dialogue is the preferred method of coaching. Coaching takes place face-to-face, and when this is not possible, by telephone or via Zoom or Skype. This dialogue situation requires a special management different from that of training a group. For coaching to be successful, it is important that the coach takes into account the context and level of knowledge of the learner. We are not all the same. Some work faster than others. It is the adaptation of the learner that is the strength of coaching. What particularly distinguishes coaching from other training methods is the importance given to the relationship. It is through this relationship that learning can take place and the learner's autonomy can develop. The relationship is more important than the content. When is coaching appropriate? Coaching is used when implementing competences, such as reinforcing the training skills of an expert, when improving performance in professional field situations, such as reinforcing the technical expertise of an executive within their company, when the basic knowledge, know-how, and methods have been learned, but their application in real-life situation still requires further development, such as where an expert has followed a ColACP Training of Trainers course, but needs to further strengthen their approach to conducting training courses. This may apply to you, following this training of trainers for sustainable environmental management. If you are not able to conduct a training course on your own following this training, you can benefit from coaching to facilitate your first COLE-ACP training. When a new situation arises that requires the learner's habits to be shaken up and pushes them to define new working methods, such as in the case of the COVID-19, COLE-ACP began to organize digital training. Qualified experts need special skills to prepare and conduct digital training if they have always been used to face-to-face training. In these situations, the focus is on the person who must apply their skills. The way in which they take charge of the mission will play a key role in its success. At this stage, it is no longer just a question of knowledge and techniques to be implemented, as those are often well known. It is rather a question of developing the learner's resources in a specific situation. Qualities of a good coach. Now let's look at what it takes to be a good coach. Let's start by looking at the coach's expertise and then the attitudes to adopt. What are the qualities of a good coach? The coach's expertise. Coaching is characterized by how the learner is supported to find solutions. Anyone can give advice, support, or feedback to a colleague. However, coaching dialogues, offering advice, support, or evaluation will make the difference because they allow learners to test and integrate this advice, support, and feedback into their own practice. This demonstrates the importance of process and relationship in relation to content. In order of importance, a coach's expertise is on two levels. 1, the process of coaching and relationship management. 2, the professional field of the learner. Even if the type of coaching means that it is preferable for the coach to have some expertise in the professional field of the learner, this expertise can prove to be a trap for coaching. An expert often has rather a quick idea of the solution to be implemented and how to do it. But reacting in this way does not develop the learner's skills. On the contrary, the learner remains dependent on the opinion of the expert and misses the opportunity to develop their own solution and test it under the coach's supervision. The coach's attitude. Several attitudes are indispensable as they facilitate the management of the relationship and consequently the learning and development process during coaching. Active listening and benevolent neutrality. The coach puts him or herself in a position of openness and active listening. The coach seeks to understand the learner's situation, to enter into the learner's frame of reference. The coach does not judge, but tries to understand the situation from the learner's point of view. The coach is neutral with regard to the situation and maintains a benevolent attitude towards the learner and the situation. The coach takes a step back from their own feelings and avoids being affected by what the learner says. By having the feeling of being listened to, the learner will be able to progress in safety. Empathy. The coach shows empathy, putting him or herself in the place of the learner, trying to understand the learner's way of seeing the situation, and also their feelings, fears, wishes, and blockages. It is by taking into consideration the learner's point of view that the situation can evolve in the future. Positive perception of the learner's skills. How the coach perceives the learner has a huge impact on the process and the achievement of the result. If the coach does not believe in the learner's ability to implement an adequate solution, the learner has no chance of doing so. The coach must trust the ability of the learner to find a solution to their own problem. A negative judgment can lead to bias in the coach's perception, preventing the neutrality necessary for an objective analysis. Work on the process rather than the solution. The coach accompanies the problem-solving or evaluation process. The coach does not try to find a solution at all costs in the place of the learner. Being solution-oriented risks the coach wanting to impose their vision on the learner without having explored all the possibilities and without taking into account the possibilities of the learner to implement it, which would lead to a breakdown in the relationship. Confidentiality. Establishing rules of confidentiality regarding what is said in a coaching session allows learners to express themselves freely without fear of negative effects outside the dialogue. Learners can freely express their fears or apprehensions and thus overcome their blockages. Make the learner active. The coach accompanies the learner in their reflection and search for solutions through questioning. The coach does not speak in the learner's place. The coach seeks to keep the learner involved in the problem situation. Encouraging. The coach encourages the learner in their process. How to coach experts or company executives after face-to-face or online training. Types of coaching dialogue. Not all coaching situations have the same objective. It is important to clearly specify the objective of the coaching in order to define the most appropriate methodology. In a classic training process and in a training of trainers process, we can identify several situations where coaching is particularly relevant. When an expert trainer accompanies a company executive following a training course, when an expert accompanies an executive or trainee in an evaluation process, or when a senior trainer coaches a junior trainer. Each of these situations may call for different types of dialogue, depending on whether there is a request for advice, support, or evaluation. Counseling dialogue. The counseling dialogue is used to help a learner in response to a specific situation or identified problem. In this type of dialogue, an expert guides a novice around the identified problem. The expert can provide solutions, suggestions, or rules of good practice. Make no mistake, bringing a solution to a novice during a coaching session is a process that must be managed within the rules of coaching. In other words, the quality of the solution brought can be very relevant. But if the process that accompanies it is not managed, the solution will have no chance of being taken into account or implemented. The attitude of the coach, the steps and the rules of conduct of the dialogue are indispensable here. The advice should only be offered after the relationship has been established. An in-depth analysis has been carried out and is in line with the learner's pace, as it is the learner who will have to implement the solutions. Supportive maintenance. Unlike the counseling dialogue, the supportive dialogue does not refer to a specific problem, but focuses on the existence of a complex problem and the need for change. It is not a question of proposing a solution to the learner, but of accompanying the learner in a process of developing their own solutions. This type of support dialogue generally happens at the request of the learner, but also of their hierarchy. As with any dialogue, the objectives must be clearly defined and must respect the general steps of the coaching dialogue. The assessment dialogue. The assessment dialogue takes place in a formal framework between a person in a learning situation or a collaborator with objectives to achieve and a person specially mandated to assess the implementation of their skills, such as line manager, the trainer, or expert. The aim here is to take stock of the results achieved and the way in which the learning and skills are being implemented in the professional situations. This evaluation process is intended to be a coaching process, in that evaluation is an integral part of any learning process. The assessment dialogue presupposes that learning and implementation objectives have been defined beforehand. The purpose of the dialogue will be to assess their actual achievement. The steps of a coaching dialogue. Creating the link, making contact. As in any long-term communication, there is no point in getting to the heart of the matter if the people involved do not know each other, or if they know each other but have not met for a long time, or if they have met in a different setting. This stage, the duration of which varies according to the situation, makes it possible to establish the conditions of trust, listening necessary for the exchange that will follow. The coach should also pay particular attention to the location. The place should be quiet and isolated from view. It is preferable to avoid formal meetings or hierarchical meeting type of arrangements. The layout should facilitate the atmosphere of the meeting. 2. Setting up the framework. The aim here is to clarify the framework of the dialogue by explaining why, what, and how. Why are we here? Who made the request? Who are we, coach and learner? What type of dialogue is it? Advice, support, or evaluation? How many times are we going to meet? How long will the dialogue last? What are the operating rules? Confidentiality, active participation? What are the objectives or objective for the coaching process? For the dialogue, how long will the dialogue take place? Contact, framework, analysis of the situation, objectives and the solutions, closing and follow-up. How are we going to work? The active role of the learner. For each question, it is necessary to check the common understanding and to consult with the learner to share the objectives and the way of doing things. 3. Analyzing the problem and implementing solutions. Analyze the problem from as many aspects as possible. Why is this a problem? Who is it a problem for? Who are the actors involved? What are the objective facts, interpretation of facts, associated feelings? What are the difficulties felt by the learner? How do they see their role? What solutions have already been implemented and by whom? What are the risks and opportunities of the situation? This analysis provides a more complete picture of the problem situation and related issues. It is only with this clarification of situation that objectives can be set and solutions adapted to the situation and the learner can begin to emerge. The learner must be active during this phase. For each solution discussed, it is essential that he or she understands the solution and sticks to it. In the end, it is the learner who will have to implement it in the workplace. This process cannot be rushed or implementation will fail. There are several ways of facilitating this stage of defining solutions. Respect the learner's space. Don't go faster than them. Anticipate the effects of the solution by imagining its implementation. This makes it possible to anticipate possible obstacles and to reduce the anxiety associated with the agreed change. Close the loop by verifying whether the solutions meet the problem and corresponds to the expected success criteria. 4. Closure. The interview ends with a summary of the dialogue and preparation of the future. A summary of the key elements of the dialogue, objectives, analysis, solutions chosen, implementation stages. A commitment on the task to be carried out after the coaching. A definition of the information needed for a possible new coaching session. Sometimes a problem situation cannot be solved through a single coaching session. A dialogue may end with a more complete analysis of the situation. This is already a step forward. Generally, it is good to let the learner live with a task in order to give them an active role and high involvement in the resolution of the problem. The learner can also test new ways of doing things to verify elements of analysis in order to set in motion a change and a draft solution. The special case of an assessment dialogue. Assessment dialogue. The assessment dialogue is distinguished by at least two aspects. On one hand, the coach is led to give their point of view in a formal way. On the other hand, the dialogue takes place to verify the achievement of previously defined objectives. The steps. 1. Stimulate interest and test the learner's receptivity. In this first phase, the aim is to reassure the learner by explaining the context and objectives of the assessment dialogue. It is also about being receptive to the learner's reactions and inviting them to ask questions. The coach answers the questions so that the evaluation process can begin with a clarification of areas of uncertainty or misunderstanding. 2. Encourage the learner to express their point of view. The coach invites the learner to express him or herself freely and confidently on how they perceive their achievement of learning and implementation of objectives. The coach helps the learner to go deeper without taking sides at this stage, based on listening and questioning. The coach verifies that all aspects related to learning and implementation are addressed and developed, as well as any points of difficulty. The coach invites the learner to ask questions and answers them. 3. Present one's own objective perception. The coach presents their perceptions in an objective manner with facts and concrete examples. The coach makes sure that the learner understands. The coach invites the learner to ask questions and answers them. 4. Make a final synthesis. The coach and the learner identify areas of agreement and disagreement. The coach brings the points of view closer together and notes the differences. Any points of difficulty are discussed in order to identify possible solutions. The coach sets new goals by engaging the learner. The coach and the learner determine indicators to measure the achievement of objectives. The coach and the learner plan further follow-up dialogues. 5. Debrief. The coach and the learner debrief freely on the commitment of the learner to the content, procedure followed, relationship. Some coaching techniques. It's not easy to facilitate a learner to express him or herself in a coaching dialogue situation. The learner may not know where to start thinking or how to explain the situation. The role of the coach is to bring learners to express themselves on several levels in terms of the facts, interpreting the situation, feelings about the situation. Open questions. Questions give the learner the opportunity to express themselves, to say what they think, what they feel. They provide a wide range of answers, a wide range of topics. What do you think about? How do you see the situation? The way in which questions are formulated must remain neutral. The objective is to obtain information, not to give one's point of view. Avoid, "I'm sure it won't work. What do you think?" Closed questions. Closed-ended questions provide answers to specific questions, thereby clarifying facts. They begin with who, when, where, how much. How many courses have you taught this semester. Closed questions may provide an answer to a choice. Would you like to be accompanied by a junior or senior colleague? Closed questions provide a commitment that can be answered with yes or no. Do you think you'll be able to carry out these 3 training activities within the given time frame? Neutral questions and expressions. Neutral questions and expressions are used to develop a specific aspect during the discussion. Tell me why you prefer this customer. They also make it possible to continue the flow of information. Tell me more about what's worrying you. The sequence of open, neutral, and closed questions. At the beginning of a dialogue, open-ended questions are more appropriate because they trigger a flow of information. Conversely, a series of closed questions would give the impression of an interrogation. In the coaching environment, it is appropriate to use neutral questions and phrases to maintain expression and gather more information on specific topics. At the end of the dialogue, the use of closed-ended questions allows the discussion on a specific topic to be closed by looping in necessary information. It is always useful to specify why a sequence of closed questions is used and thus avoid the interrogation effect. Reflection statements. Reflection statements allow the coach to verbalize a feeling expressed by the learner and show that their feelings are perceived and understood. They can then be more easily expressed and the learner can get rid of his burning feelings. You seem really worried. I can see you are happy about it. Expressions of interest. Dialogue can be facilitated through techniques other than questioning. Verbal or non-verbal expressions of interest encourage the learner to share ideas. Go on. Continue. I see. However, care must be taken not to overuse them and to use them only when we understand. Otherwise, the discussion will be confusing. Similarly, care must be taken to ensure that they are not interpreted as adherence to discourse. Breaks and silences. Although breaks and silences can be expressions of a negative way, they have an important function in allowing the learner to assimilate and reflect on what has just been said. They also prevent the person from feeling pressured, and they allow the coach time for reflection. But useful silences should not be confused with embarrassed silences, which need to be managed during the dialogue. Reformulation. A reformulation of the learner's words is essential as it allows understanding of what has been said to be checked and its meaning to be verified. Rewording can concern verbal expressions as well as non-verbal attitudes or behaviors. Do you think the number of participants in the training was adequate? You seem nervous about it. Reformation allows the learner to feel understood and listened to. Synthesis. The synthesis aims to summarize the main points. It allows us to complete part of the reflection. It can be total or partial. During this dialogue, we first identified the problem situation. It is characterized by, then we defined an objective for this dialogue. This objective is, then we analyzed the situation. This enabled us to highlight. For the next time you have decided to test, do you agree with this summary? On the question of which customers can contact, you list 3 steps. The first will be, and the second will be, and the third will be.